Souls collectors, and welcome to another Bossk Bounty video, and welcome to episode 203 of our Bossk Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series where I answer your questions. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, please leave your question in the comment section below of this video, and as I said, hopefully you'll be featured next week. We've had loads of great questions again this week, so thank you everybody that has submitted one. And with all that being said, if you do happen to enjoy the video, hit the like button down below, subscribe if you're new, and let's get into this. Cliff Oliveira says, Happy New Year, boss. Question for next week. What are your top 5 2023 figures? Well, buddy, in between last week's episode of Bossk Bounty and this week's, I did actually put out a video for my top 10 favourite figures of 2023. I don't really want to ruin what's in that video, so maybe after this video you guys can go and watch that if you haven't watched it already. It's on the channel right now. Chris Rook says, Hey BB, Happy New Year. Question for next week. I know people are wanting Cobb Vanth in and out of armour. I was just thinking, wasn't there a Jango Fett that had removable armour? If so, then what do you think of making a deluxe version of Cobb with the removable armour? Basically, you're killing two birds with one stone. Yeah, I do believe there was a figure that did that. I'm not too sure, you know, how aesthetically pleasing that would be in this day and age. You know, how does the armour clip on? Does it, you know, plug in somehow, and then without the armour you've got like holes in the torso, or other ways? Would it easily fall off? That kind of thing. So I'm not too sure in this day and age if that's a viable sort of way that they could do that. And having said that, with the evidence of the Jango Fett, it does worry me that a Cobb Vanth with Boba Fett's armour would end up being a deluxe. And, you know, maybe if they were to do the version without the armour from the Book of Boba Fett, the Sheriff version if you like, then that would be your standard figure. It's not good thinking that way, but with the evidence of Jango Fett, that's kind of how I'm thinking. Eric Martinez says, question for next week. With how well the Black Series Starkiller figure seems to have been received both in the deluxe release and the normal release, what are the chances we will see a new Starkiller figure in the next year or two for TVC? Well, I think the fact that it is in the Black Series increases the chances, because obviously, you know, they can share digital sculpts. If you look at Cad Bane, for example, the two figures are virtually identical. Same with Ahsoka as well. So they obviously share like digital sculpts these days and can scale things down or up a lot easier than they could before. Having said that, they did only just re-release the Starkiller. Was it last year they did that? So would they make another one so soon? I'm not too sure, but maybe in like, as you say, in like maybe 2 years time, they could revisit that. But I think any sooner than that, probably not. Stephen DeBursa says, Hi boss, great show last week. Best wishes to you and all the community for 2024. Question for next week. Do you anticipate that Hasbro's reveals planned for later this month will cover the prequel anniversary product plans for 2024 and all the pipeline plans for A New Hope figures? I'm hoping we see news on the Leia A New Hope figure and news on a vehicle or playset. Many thanks, Steve. Yes, we don't really know what's going to be happening at the end of this month. All we know is that Entertainment Earth sort of teased some kind of reveal for the Vintage Collection. That could be a single figure or it could be a bunch of reveals. We don't really know at this stage. I would suggest that we probably will see a number of reveals. That's my sort of opinion on what I think will happen. There'll be like some kind of live stream, hopefully. And yeah, I think in that we will most likely see, hopefully, the Leia, hopefully the Vader. That's why I've put that Vader there. I'll talk about that in a second. And maybe the Stormtrooper as well, because they seem to be in a wave together that's at least going to be this half of the year, or the first half of the year. So I would expect to see them, you know, sooner rather than later. I've put that Darth Vader there because it does interest me that they use the same card back image for that Darth Vader, which is VC93, which is the A New Hope Vader, VC93, as you can see there. The same image was used for the previous Darth Vader, VC08, but obviously that one was on a Empire Strikes Back logo, and then they made the Revenge logo and the Return of the Jedi logo as well. Yeah, so recently when they've made a figure that's been in the line previously, like the 501st Clone Trooper, for example, they've given it a new card back. So it will be interesting to see what they do with the new Darth Vader, because it is from A New Hope, just like this one here. So it's going to be an updated Vader based on that Dark Times Vader that we had before, but for A New Hope. So will they give it an all new card back, or will they give it the classic Kenner card back that we have there? But yeah, I would expect to see those hopefully by the end of the month, hopefully with the Leia as well. As for the Phantom Menace, I'm not even too sure if we're going to be getting anything for that yet. Channel member Carl Wilson says, Hi Bossk, Happy New Year. Hopefully 2024 will be a good one for TVC. Question for next week. When do you think we'll get any updates regarding the Ghost and the figures? It would be great to see reveals of the Sabine and Chopper mural card backs. Thanks, Carl. Well, I'm pretty sure that those two figures will be up for pre-order in the next month or so. I'm pretty sure one of the Hasbro Q&As said that those two figures will be available early on in the year. So if they're going to be up for pre-order, then we'll definitely see them. In terms of the Ghost itself, I think the only thing really left to see is the sort of packaging. So I would hope, again, that we would see that pretty soon as well. Although I'm not too sure if they're going to be too bothered about when we would see that, because it's not going to affect any sales. You can't order that thing anymore. It's done. So I don't think there's any particular rush for them to get that out necessarily. Modal Node says, Happy New Year. Bossk Bounty, question for next week. Do you think the upper body of the new Han Solo Endor is good enough for Hasbro to use for a brand new A New Hope Han Solo, provided they retool the legs and the lower torso? Otherwise, I fear it will be years before we get a definitive Han release. Yeah, I was just having a quick look at this figure, and you know, I do have a love-hate relationship with this figure, because in my display, when he's standing there in front of the bunker, from a distance, he looks pretty good. But it's only when you look at him close up that there's elements of this figure that I really do not like. In terms of the upper torso, are you talking about from the split upwards? Because if there's one thing that I don't like about this figure as well as the legs, it is that split torso. I don't like those unless it's like on a trooper or something, or you know, the figure can hide it well. When it's like a shirt like the Lando and this one, I don't really think it's necessary. I would prefer it for a Han Solo or a Han Solo, however you say that they 100% retool the figure from the ground up. I think Han Solo from the, you know, debut film, Star Wars A New Hope, that figure deserves all new tooling. As does the Leia, as does the Luke if they ever get round to that, and as does the Ben Kenobi as well. And for that matter, so does C-3PO and R2-D2. All 6 of those, I would say, need all new tooling. So it would be a little bit annoying when and if they get round to Han Solo that they, you know, just use parts from an older figure. I think they need to respect the, you know, the character a little bit more. Flipping Kick says, Happy New Year. Question for next week. If Hasbro's quality of figures dropped off a ledge, what figure would be an example of quality where you would say, I'm out? Thanks for the vids. Luckily, the majority of the figures that we get these days are of a very high quality. And obviously the price reflects that, unfortunately. But I would say, you know, if they made a habit of bringing out figures like the Endor Leia, for example, you know, just giving her a new head pretty much and a different coloured poncho on a 16-year-old figure at the time, then I would have problems with that if they were doing that on many occasions. And it was a bit upsetting, obviously, because that's Princess Leia. I think any of the sort of main characters, like I just said with Han Solo there, they should really be treating those with the greatest of respect when it comes to, you know, bringing out a new release of the figure. You shouldn't really cut corners with those main characters. Channel member Riley Bob says, Happy New Year to you and yours, boss. Question for next week. New year, new ideas. Thinking of HasLab figure packs, how much would you think the community would be willing to spend per figure to get all new tooling on all new, completely updated figures, and how many per HasLab pack to make it worth Hasbro's time? More figures to stretch the dollar ratio, or more new or less figures? Always keep up the great work. Yeah, this definitely would involve a sort of expanded conversation with some buddies of mine. Maybe we'll talk about it on a future live stream, but you know, I wouldn't really want to talk for the rest of the community and how much they would be willing to pay for a figure. I can only give you my opinion. And I think if they were ever to do figure packs in the HasLab, then as my friend John Miko says, we would probably have to pony up for them. And that means they're going to be more than your regular release. Now, how much more are we talking? I think if you were to say to me, you would get, say, 6 in a figure pack. That's how many I'd go for, 6 or 8. All new, like completely newly tooled figures. And obviously it's the character choice has got to be right as well. So it's figures that I feel that they wouldn't be able to put out in the main line. I can't really go through names of characters right now because the list would be as long as my arm. But I would say $20 would probably be a fair price in my mind. Having said that, I would think that once they get to a certain amount of orders, then they would have to start throwing in some like extras, stretch goals, to make it more valuable to the consumer. So I'm thinking accessories, extra accessories, I'm thinking proof cards, alternate cards, I'm thinking maybe even a whole new figure. Maybe if there's, you know, a pack of 8 and they get, you know, way over what they expected to make that thing happen, then make another figure as well. Make it up to 9. That's just my opinion. I think any more than $20 and you're probably asking a bit much. You know, the last thing we want is, say, I don't know, 8 figures at $25, because then you're getting into deluxe territory. But then again, as I said, it depends what they come with. If they actually come with loads and loads of accessories which make them deluxe, maybe they could have an accessories pack on a card back or something that goes with them all. I don't know. But yeah, it'd be good to have sort of a conversation about that, maybe on a live stream or something. Rob Ernest says, Happy New Year, BB. Great vid as always. Question for next week. Bear with me. The new Django has me pondering about Hasbro's direction regarding new sculpts of characters that are already in TVC. Instead of putting him on a card back, the new sculpt is being offered as a deluxe. This is me fearing that new sculpted versions of characters like A New Hope Tarkin and Revenge of the Sith Cody could be released as deluxe offerings instead of on a card back. Could this be the direction Hasbro goes for appeasing collectors of TVC 1.0 by helping maintain the secondary market value of figures like Tarkin and Cody, while offering the newly updated versions as deluxes only? Thoughts? Yeah, I'm not too sure if Hasbro sort of look into it as deeply as that. And also, Django is not really a new sculpt. There's a lot of reuse there, basically, from previous figures, which is one of the things that's really annoying about that figure, trying to work out where the extra value comes from to make him a deluxe. And also, going forward, I'm not too sure how much longer we're going to be seeing those boxed deluxe figures. Maybe they'll revert back to doing something like they did for the Sith Trooper with all the extra accessories. You know, I could see them maybe doing something like that, but again, we'll have to wait and see what they do. But no, I think if they were to do a new Tarkin, then there would be no new tooling in that specifically, I don't think, because they've got it all from the new officer sculpt anyway. It's just a new head, so there's no way they could, you know, charge deluxe pricing for that figure. RD Evans says, question, there's been some talk about medium-sized vintage collection vehicles lately. What do you think about a cloud car? With some modifications, the 2010 Shadows of the Dark Side cloud car could be repackaged in a vintage collection box, maybe even with an updated cloud car pilot. Would be nice addition to any Bespin display, along with the carbon freezing chamber, the Millennium Falcon and the Slave One. Yeah, so I've got this figure here that was actually gifted to me recently by Luke B. Thank you so much, Luke. And, you know, now I've got that figure loose, a cloud car is definitely on my radar. I have been looking on eBay at, you know, boxed versions to maybe do a review of it as well. And of course, I would much prefer it to be in a vintage collection box, especially as it's one Kenner did. So you could kind of use you know, the same sort of image to get that sort of Kenner look from back in the day. And I don't think there's anything too wrong with the Shadows of the Dark Side version. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below, but is there too much else they could do to that apart from weathering up a little bit more? I think that would be a good repack, to be honest. mblue2321 says, Happy New Year, Tim. May you and your family have a great year. Question for next week. How many TVC figures do you own, carded and non-carded? I personally have 182 carded and about 112 displayed. That's a fine collection, buddy. Yeah, I think at one point I pretty much had every release carded that they've ever done, so we're past 305 now, aren't we? Plus there's a bunch of variants as well, isn't there? Like all of the Revenge of the Jedi ones and things like that. At one point I pretty much had, you know, every release that was going, plus obviously lots and lots of them loose as well, because you've got troopers for army building, loads of things like that. Having said that, I would say that I have been sort of reducing my carded collection somewhat, because now I'm in my new collection room. I cannot and do not have the space to put every single figure on the wall, and I don't really want to do that either anymore. So now I'm only displaying the carded figures that I really like, and the majority of those are original trilogy and Rogue One, few Mandalorian, few prequel trilogy, that kind of thing. So I have actually been moving a few of them on, and since moving into the collection room, you know, I now have room to display sort of loose dioramas and things like that. So my love for displaying them loose has grown tenfold, and I'm just sort of in that mindset now that I don't need to be a completionist for it. I don't need every single one carded. Of course, I get all the new releases, review them, but whether I actually keep a carded sample these days is another matter. It has to be something really, really good for me to do that. But yeah, that's about it. Aquilish Doug says, Happy New Year, Tim. Question for next week. If you don't see too many new prequel figures coming for TVC in 2024, do you think we could see a wave of prequel trilogy repacks? Aura Singh, Jar Jar, Kit, Fisto, Super Battle Droid, for example. I think that way of doing it will probably be the more likely scenario rather than giving us too much new stuff from the prequel. But I think what I said was that I couldn't really see them celebrating the Phantom Menace as an anniversary by itself. I think they've even said that they're going to be celebrating the prequels, very much like they did with the Clone Wars. And I still don't think that's going to give us a whole load of new stuff from the Phantom Menace or the prequels for that matter. I think what we will get is, obviously we've got Dooku, which is great, but I think other than that, what we'll get is, as you say, a bunch of repacks. Whether they'll be in like a wave, as you say there, I'm not too sure. Obviously, sometimes we hear things, don't we? And at one point, I did think Aura Singh would be a figure that would be included for this year, but I'm not too sure if that's the thing anymore. So things change all the time. Q Mighty says, love hearing the passion about the Phantom Menace 25. I really hope to get some good stuff next year for that beat, specifically for the Phantom Menace and not just the prequels in general. Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see on that, buddy. All new Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan and Maul would be fantastic releases in my opinion. Question for next week. What would be your top picks for an all new Phantom Menace figure for the anniversary? Yeah, I mean, I'd go with what you're saying there. I mean, I've got Qui-Gon there. I desperately think he needs an update, and so does Darth Maul from the Phantom Menace as well. It's funny, isn't it? When we try and think of, like, you know, characters that we'd want, ideally, we'd like to talk about figures that they've never done before, but also, you know, going back and looking at the ones that they have done for the main characters that are no longer good enough. Obi-Wan is another one, Qui-Gon, Maul, as you say there. But just to throw some others out there, you know, the Droideka would be a great one. They're getting that in the Black Series. I'd love to see that in the Vintage Collection. And I've always said as well, Watto for me is one from the Phantom Menace that they should be doing. If they could give us an all-new Watto, that would be great. But I would say a really important one to get right would be Darth Maul. LT Santiago says, Happy New Year, boss. Question for next week. For another TVC HasLab project, since the Ghost did so well, do you think Hasbro would look into making the Marauder with the rest of the Bad Batch crew to go with the TVC Hunter and eventually make their mercenary looks down the line? Love the videos and keep up the awesome work. Oh man, that Hunter figure, what a waste of time and money and tooling budget that really was, wasn't it? Because from what I can see, I can't really see the rest of that Bad Batch on the horizon anytime soon. That Hunter figure, as great as it is just sitting in a box. I can't do anything with it, which is a great shame because it is a great figure. So the Marauder, I mean, I think it's very much like the Ghost. If people want it, then it is the sort of vehicle that would probably have to be a HasLab. I personally can't see that happening, and it's one of those ones that the community would probably have to ask for in a very big way with lots of people, like they have done the Ghost for, you know, 2 or 3 years before they even consider it. That's just my opinion on that one anyway. But you're right, if they did do the Marauder, it would be a way to get the rest of the Bad Batch out and their mercenary outfits and all that. But yeah, the Bad Batch, man, where are those figures going to come from? I really do not know. Kirk K says, question for next week. After the success associated with the last figure standing, have you and the other leaders in the community considered doing similar but much less labour intensive polls for vehicles, beasts and playsets? Based on the questions here each week, it is clear that collectors have an interest in getting these items. If Hasbro wants to know what we will buy, then maybe we could take the mystery out of it for them. Cough, blurg, cough, cough, cantina. Thanks as always for all you do. Yeah, it's definitely something that we've talked about, buddy. 100%, you know, we do want to do something like that. We've just got to sort of work out how we do that. Because if you just take vehicles by itself, you know, some people might want the U-Wing a large scale so that figures can go in it and everything like that, and it'd have to be a HasLab, or some people would be happy with one the size of the one that came out in the sort of basic line, but, you know, with more things going on with it, more features and better deco and things like that. So it's a bit difficult sort of, you know, working out what people want in terms of whether it's a small, mid or large scale vehicle. So, you know, we're just trying to sort of work out how we would do that. But it's definitely something on our minds. And, you know, I for one would love to know the results of something like that. This is No Cave says, belated congratulations on your 200th Ask Bossk Bounty episode. It's a must watch for me every week, and your perspective helps air important concerns in the community. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. He says, question for next week. Breaking down the numbers from what's been offered in TVC over the past 2 years, it seems that the Clone Wars still occupies a substantial portion of the line, but it seems like Hasbro is largely focused on the clones and nowhere near as much on the individual characters. There appears to be some clone fatigue in the TVC community, but love for the Clone Wars continues. I guess 54 plus hours of content in all 7 seasons will earn you some fans. Pre-Vizsla was a welcome addition to the line, but because of the other recent Mandalorians in TVC, he seemed like an easy figure to make. It appears that none of the separatists from the Clone Wars have ever been made in TVC, and characters like Plo Koon, along with other Jedi Council members, are almost set dressing in the prequels, but were turned into interesting characters in the Clone Wars. What are your thoughts on Hasbro expanding on the Clone Wars characters who are not clones? Buddy, I think everybody would want that, most certainly. I think a lot of people, absolutely love the Clone Wars and want the characters that you've mentioned there. Other Jedi, the possibility of those has increased because of that Obi-Wan that we got in that 2-pack. I think, that at least his upper torso can be used for other figures, perhaps. But in terms of the others, what you've mentioned there, you kind of sort of said it in your question, where you say that pre-Vizsla was easy for them to do, and let's face it, clones are easy for them to do as well. So when Hasbro is sitting there thinking, well, we need to do some Clone Wars stuff because there's Clone Wars fans, they're going to look at the easiest way of doing it, basically. So you've got clones and you've got Mandalorians, and they've got all the tooling they're ever going to need for those now. Any of the other characters are going to be pretty much all new tooling, and then it's about, do you spend that tooling dollars on Clone Wars characters, original trilogy characters, or do you spend it on new media? And unfortunately, and this is just my opinion, it might not sit well with other people, the tooling budget, the all-new tooling budget, seems to go to new media because obviously, those characters have never been made before. They can't go back to previous tooling and use certain parts and things like that. And I think John Miko, my buddy at the Facebook group, provided a dashboard of some statistics and stuff for last year's figures. And we only got one figure for the original trilogy that was all new tooling last year. Just one. All of that stuff that we got for Return of the Jedi, the anniversary, and whatever else they brought out for the original trilogy last year were kit bashes and repaints and repacks and things like that. Now, if you can make figures with existing tooling like they did with Squidhead and Velkin and all of those guys, then great, of course, that's brilliant. We love that. But we also want figures that require all new tooling as well for the original trilogy, not just new media. And the same goes for the Clone Wars. Loads of people out there want Pong Krell. It's not particularly one of my favourite characters, but that figure would need all new tooling. So if you want Hasbro to do that figure, then obviously a new media figure has got to lose out. Alright then guys, that's it for this week's episode. Please leave your questions for next week's episode, which will be episode 204, in the comment section below. And please don't forget to watch my top 10 figures of 2023, which is on the channel now, if you haven't done so already. I want to thank everybody for watching, and thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members for your awesome support as always. So thank you so much, and we shall see you on the next one.